Sometimes you just have to wait your turn. For a while, I was struggling with knowing my purpose and what God wanted for my life. And it took me a while to come to this realization, and there's a whole story behind it. I graduated college in 2020 during a time where the world didn't know what was going on. Um, the pandemic was going on, and a lot of people didn't know if we were going to live or if we were not going to. Some people didn't know what was going to happen next. They didn't know what the next day was going to be. Um, but despite all of that, I was graduating college, which made it a really difficult time to just navigate because when you graduate college, you're expecting to get a nice job, you're expecting to start out in your career. And that's the position that I was in when I was graduating college. I was coming into this environment um, of uncertainty. But thanks to God, He did provide me with a job. In 2020, I moved to Nashville where I started working. I was an intern at the time and I was doing a lot of communication work, you name it, all kinds of work. I was doing social media campaigns, doing video, doing photography, doing flyers. I was doing webinars, you name it. In the communication world, I was doing it all. And that really opened up my mind to the different avenues that you could do for communications. And that's what I went to school for. I graduated with a degree in mass communications and with an emphasis in photography. And so the fact that I was allowed by God, that God opened the door to let me get a job in the midst of the chaos of 2020 with the pandemic, He allowed me to get a job. And not only did He allow me to get a job, but He allowed me to get one that would open up my mind to the different avenues of communication. I stayed there for almost 2 years doing communication, and then I moved to Chattanooga. I moved to Chattanooga and I was doing some freelance work for different organizations, and I have my own business called Golden Capture. And Golden Capture is basically a media agency that helps clients manage their social medias, produce content for their branding, such as video and photography. So I was doing a lot of work for myself and trying to grow my business when I moved back to Chattanooga. And during that time, I was really just contemplating with God as to what my next step in life would be. At the time, my business wasn't growing as fast as I wanted it to grow. And I really didn't see the the upward growth that I wanted at the time. So I went back to apply for jobs in the communication realm. I applied to so many jobs, and mind you, a lot of this was still like kind of post pandemic at this point, but it was still pandemic. A lot of people were still getting sick, and I just continued to just pursue and apply for different jobs. And while I was applying for different jobs, I always told myself that I would never not work. So during that time, I was working at FedEx, and I hated my job, honestly. I truly did, because it just wasn't the best environment, and I didn't enjoy going in. It was it was a lot of work. I was tired. My body was sore after every shift. It was a mess, to say the least. For me, it was. I still put my best foot forward during that time. I would always show up on time. I always do my best work as much as I could to pack the boxes into the trailers and whatnot. And that's what I was doing at the time. While I was working at FedEx, I got a call from an individual that they wanted to hire me for an interim communication position, and I accepted the call. Um, but one thing I want to mention before accepting this call is that while I was applying, a couple of days prior to getting that call, I had another call from another job that was local in the Chattanooga area that they wanted to hire me. They liked my interview. I had gone in for an interview and they wanted to hire me. And so I was on the fence about should I take this job or should I take this other job? The other job was not local. It was a hybrid job, but it was not in the city that I currently had lived in. So I would have to commute back and forth to a different city for this job. And so I kind of prayed about it. I prayed about it that night and I made the decision to accept the hybrid job and decline the job that was local in my city. And that was a very tough decision for me to make because I didn't know the certainties of this hybrid job and whatnot. So I stayed at the hybrid job for maybe about 6, 7 months. It wasn't a full year, but it was about like 6 or 7 months. I stayed at this hybrid job and I learned a lot. I learned how to manage because I was a one-man team essentially when it came to communication. So I learned a lot in that aspect. And after leaving that position, I came back to uncertainty. Honestly, I did not know what my next step would be or where I was going to go in life, and I I felt lost in a sense. I I didn't know where God was taking me next, and I was like, God, I trusted in you to get to take this hybrid role. Now that this role has ended, what is my next step? Where am I to go? What am I to do? Um, in the midst of all this praying and contemplating with God, I started working as a substitute teacher at a local middle school, and I was enjoying it at the time. I enjoyed being able to mentor students and help them in their learning, honestly. But that wasn't what I wanted to do long term. Long term, I wanted to essentially get back into the communication world. I wanted to do communication work. And I continued to pray and ask God, and I was like, God, what do you want me to do? Where do you want me to go? So after just all this praying, I continued to apply for jobs. I saw a job that was available at a local university. And so I applied to this university and I didn't get my hopes up because I had already been turned down by so many different jobs. Um, and I just prayed and I was like, God, if it's your will, then I'll get this job. So I continued to pray and to ask God what He wanted in my life. I continued to be a substitute teacher at the time, um, and that wasn't really paying as much as I needed it to pay to cover all my bills. Um, but I was trusting in God and leaning onto His own understanding, not mine, to just guide my life. So uh, as I'm applying to different jobs and I hear back from this university and they say that they want me to come in for a second interview. My first interview was online and that went well. So they asked me to come in for a second interview. I came in for the second interview. I did the interview and um, they liked my interview. They liked what I said and how I presented myself, and that's all the glory to God. Eventually, I heard back from them, and they did hire me, and that's where I currently work right now. I work as a digital engagement manager for a university, and what that essentially is I manage the social medias, I manage photography and video for the university. I would not have been able to successfully be in this role and do my best if I hadn't had the opportunities that I had before. Um, One thing I did neglect to mention, in my first job, they were, after I was an intern for a while, they were hiring a communication director. I applied for that position and I didn't get it, because not knowing at the time that God had bigger plans for me, and if I was to get in that role at that time, I would have to stay there for a while. But God had other plans for me, and He was setting up the stepping stones for me to get where I needed to get. So where I'm at now, if I hadn't had the opportunities that I had before, I would not have had the foundation and the fundamentals and the learning process to know, to have the know-how of to do the job that I'm doing right now. Um, so I just wanted to make this video to encourage those who are on a journey in life, which we all are, to trust God, because He will close doors because you're not ready for those doors to be open, because you may not know how to handle the blessings that God has behind those doors. So He is making you go a separate path to show you and teach you how to handle the blessings that He has in store for you in the future. So I am just grateful and thankful that God has placed me where I am today. And I know you all probably hear me talk about a lot of communication work, um, making videos, posting content, and stuff like that. And I actually do that for a living. It's not that I just like talk about it and stuff like that. I actually do it for a living, which is a blessing. I never take it for granted, and I always try to put my best foot forward. And do I fail sometimes? Yes. Um, I'm not perfect, and I do fail sometimes, but I always trust in God, and I ask Him to continue to guide me and push me to be a better me, and guide me to whatever doors He has and whatever blessings He has, because I know that if my door is not open yet, it's just because I'm not ready to receive those blessings that God has for me. So like I always say in my videos, thank you for watching, thank you for subscribing, and I hope that this video has been a blessing to someone, and I hope you have really and truly received a blessing from my testimony, and I hope that it will help you on your journey. So share it with your dog, share it with your cat, share it with your neighbor, share it with the person down the street, share it with your best friend, share it with your aunt, your uncle, your cousin, share it with everybody. And you already know what I'm about to say. I'm out, I'm out, I'm out. Woo, woo, woo.